What's happening, everyone? So the other day I sat down and I watched the brand new Netflix animated series Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft. And if I'm being honest, I should have finished watching the show a lot sooner than I did, but it came out the same day as Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and that game has encompassed all of my time because it is absolute
perfection.
However, I did carve out a window of opportunity to finish watching the show because I am a fan of Lara Croft. As a matter of fact, Tomb Raider was one of the first games on console that I ever played. My dad bought me a PS2 back when I was a really little kid, and it was my first major console, and he owned Tomb Raider for the PS1, so I popped it in and I gave the game a shot. And that's what got me into the franchise. As I grew up, I played a few more Tomb Raider games. I played Tomb Raider Underworld. I have a vivid memory of getting stuck on the last level, which to this day, I still haven't beaten. Then when I got older and became a teenager, Crystal Dynamics started releasing their Tomb Raider games in the Survivor timeline. I played through 2013's Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider, and I bought Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but I still haven't beaten it yet. And of course, I watched Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider movie. So it's safe to say I had a vested interest in this show when it was coming out. However, I hadn't planned on making a video about it until fate dealt its hands and changed my perspective. You see, when I finished watching the show, I wanted to talk about it with my friends. But my friend who is really into Tomb Raider hadn't been able to watch the show yet, so I did the next best thing, and I looked up online what people thought about the show, and
Jesus Christ.
I was not prepared for the amount of incessant hatred that I saw this show getting, because it's like, it's not that bad. It's okay, at best, mediocre maybe, but hate-wise, it's a little bit extreme. And I feel like the big problem with this is, and what spawned me in making this video, is the fact that the majority of the people that are hating on this show, I shouldn't say the majority, I should say a lot of the people that I've seen hating on the show, between people who've made videos about it and people that have written complaints about the show, are anti-woke extremists that are lying about the show to prove a point. And I find that absolutely hilarious because the show's bad enough as it is to criticize without needing to lie about it. So I decided I'd make this video. I debunk a lot of the claims that I've heard people make about the show that are just straight up lies, and I would give an opinion on how the show is from just a critical standpoint and tell you if you should watch the show, if you are a fan of Tomb Raider, if you're just a random person who hasn't seen the show yet. But if you do not care about me debunking the falsities that I've heard about this show, I have a timestamp down in the description so you can just skip ahead to hear my opinion of what's going on with the show and if it's good enough for you to watch or for you to dismiss. So, with all that being said, let's get into it. Now, before I start getting into the lies and unpleasant things I've heard people say about the development team that has made this show, I want to make it very clear. If you do not like this show, this does not mean that you are on the same side as these people that I'm about to talk about. I know that this show has a lot of flaws that I will bring up later that make it very easy for people to just not like it. So you are not the same as these people I'm about to bring up. I just want to make that very clear so it doesn't feel like I'm insulting someone that's just like, well, I don't like the show, but I don't agree with what these people are saying. I'm not blaming you. You cannot like this show, and I will bring it up later, the flaws that make it very possible for you to not like this show without aligning with some of the stuff that I'm about to bring up. And the second thing is that I do not agree with either side of this anti-woke versus woke argument. I feel like both sides of this argument have very valid criticisms, and they also have extreme negatives. I feel like on the woke side, it's perfectly fine to want people to have media that appeals to their cultures, ethnicities, religions, etc. But things just being diverse and inclusive doesn't automatically make it good. And then on the opposite side of things being diverse and inclusive doesn't make it automatically bad. But I do agree the entertainment media has a problem with overstepping its boundaries and forcing things to be diverse and inclusive and not caring how it affects the product as a whole. Instead of just wanting to prioritize making something good, they'll prioritize widening the range of the people that can watch or consume this piece of media rather than being like, okay, we're going to make something good. It'll probably appeal to this small demographic of people, and that's what we're going for. They're going to be like, okay, it appeals to these people. Let's try and widen that range as much as possible and get a bunch of people into this one thing, regardless of how it affects the quality of the product. So I believe that that's a thing as well. I kind of fall in the middle of the argument between both sides of this case. And I just want people to understand where I fall, so they don't look at this video and they go like, oh, he's just one of those wokey guys, and that's why he doesn't like that we're saying X, Y. No, that's not the case whatsoever. Now, let us get into the first thing that I want to debunk about this show. And it's probably the biggest thing that I have heard from all these kinds of people talking about the show, and that's the fact that the design for Lara Croft in this show makes her look like a man.
You serious?
Yeah, I'm not kidding when I say that. I have heard on numerous occasions that people actually believe that Lara in this show looks like a man. And I find it absolutely hysterical when I hear this, because these same people will be like, nah, listen, I like a muscular female character, but Lara in this show looks too muscular, and her design makes her look broad, so she looks like a man, and her face is designed in a way that makes her look more oafish and look like a dude. But then turn around and look at designs like from these two artists here that drew fan art of Lara Croft, and they'll be like, yes, that's it, peak, that's what Lara's supposed to look like. Even though Lara in these two images is more shredded than the Lara that's in the show. So if the problem is that she's too muscular and too broad and she looks like a dude, then why do you like these images that portray her to be even more muscular than she is in the show? That seems very hypocritical of you. Then, on top of that, Lara isn't even broad, and her face isn't structured like a man. Just look at this image here, where she's standing next to two of the male characters from the show. Lara clearly has a more angular face as opposed to the broad design that the male characters have to show that she is a woman. The guys have a more square line jaw, and hers is more angular, just to prove this point. And then in regards to their body frames, the guys are drawn to be more box-shaped, because that's just how, like, dudes' bodies are. But Lara, her chest protrudes more out, that way it gives her somewhat of an hourglass figure. Now, she doesn't have, like, a sucked-in waist that gives her the full hourglass look, like maybe some other adaptations of Lara Croft has in the past, but you can still tell her chest protrudes, so it starts to give that hourglass shape at the top, and then her waist is more slender than her upper and lower body. So it looks like she has somewhat of that figure shape to make her look like a woman. And she's clearly smaller than the guys that are on screen. So I don't really understand what people mean when they say that she looks like a man. And then I've heard comparisons saying that, like, oh, nah, see, I like feminine characters that are strong and muscular. You know, just look at Street Fighter. All of those characters are fine. But, like, I don't know. Like, Lara doesn't look any different. Like, I've heard people criticize, like, her legs being too big. Like, Chun-Li's legs are way bigger than Lara. What makes this a problem, but then you're okay and think Chun-Li is sexy? I just don't understand what people are looking at, because the complaints that they have don't make any sense, as I've just explained to you. So what exactly are you seeing with your eyes? Like, is your vision distorting? Are you hallucinating when you look at this and it makes her look like a gremlin? Like, I don't understand where people are coming from with this. And this isn't even my favorite design of Lara that I've seen. I prefer a lot of other designs. I think she looks a lot cooler in Tomb Raider Legend. That was a Tomb Raider game I played back in the day. I think I had it on the GameCube, you know? So, like, this isn't even, like, my favorite design of the character, and I approve of the video game design more than I do of the show design, even though these take place in the same universe, so technically this is the same Lara, but I don't know. She looks more different in the earlier Tomb Raider video games than she does in this show, but that's besides the point. My point is that she doesn't look like a man. So, like, I completely disagree with this argument, and I just don't understand what people are seeing, because when I hear what they complain about her looking like, it just doesn't line up with what I'm visually seeing from this show. The second thing, which I take extreme personal offense to, is that the animation looks bad. I'm sorry. Okay, I need to take a breather for a second, because this one really bothers me. I have watched animation my entire life from all over the world, so I have a decent idea of what good and bad animation looks like. Obviously, I have my biases over what I like and what I don't like, but I will never say that something looks bad when it's for a reason that I just personally don't like. Great example of this is Devilman Crybaby. I don't like the way Devilman Crybaby looks. The art style they went with there for the show, it's just kind of unpleasant to me, but I can still agree that the animation looks fantastic. The fight scenes and the movements in that show look beautiful. Even though I don't like the style of art they went for with it, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it looks bad just because I have a personal issue with it. Now, in regards to the Tomb Raider show, you cannot confidently look me in the eye and tell me that this looks bad. Or this. Or this. And even this. There's no way you can look me dead in the eye and tell me that's bad animation. And if you do, you are just lying to yourself and to me to try and prove a point. Because Powerhouse does not make poorly animated things. Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't mention that earlier. If you're someone who knows animation, Powerhouse are the same people that made this. And this. And even this. You expect me to believe that these people all of a sudden lost all of their talent? What, did the Monstars hit them up and suck all of the energy out of them? It's just ridiculous to me. And I've seen people literally compare scenes that look good, and they're like, oh, you see how bad this looks? And I'm just sitting there like, what are y'all talking about? The animation isn't bad here. And listen, if you don't like the art style, that's fine. You cannot like the art style. Just say that then. Don't lie and say it looks bad just because you don't like it personally. There is a very big difference between those two things. Coincidentally, I just got into an argument with my friends the other night about Matt Reeves' The Batman. They didn't like a lot of the visuals and stuff that went on with the movie, and they had criticisms about that. Meanwhile, me, and I know a lot of other people around the world, love the style and direction of the movie. So there's clearly a difference of opinion that people have, but that doesn't make something bad. And the last thing that I have to bring up is that people have been being very aggressive towards the woman that made this show. I've heard people bring up complaints that because the woman that wrote this show is an overweight person of color, she's a part of the woke movement, that's why this show ended up being bad. And if you have to insult a real life person, not criticize their work, mind you, they're doing that too, but they're also insulting the individual themselves. If you have to insult an actual person to prove a point, that's just pathetic. I have no other word to describe that. There is no reason that you have to insult a real life person to try and get your point across. And it doesn't even make sense. What a person looks like does not dictate the quality of what they're making. That is one of the most absurd statements I have ever heard. Sure, someone's life experiences can play into how they make something, but looking at the woman who made the show and then going, oh yeah, see, she's clearly one of those wokies that wrote this show in a way to appeal to that community, that is ridiculous. That is so goddamn stupid. And I don't understand how anyone could just sit down and tell people this and not think to themselves, hey, maybe this is taking it too far. You would think that this woman took their children and threw them into the depths of hell.
Here you go.
That that's just how it feels to me, and I don't understand how you could just do something like that. Because I've criticized people's effort and work that they've done before, the same way people have criticized the stuff that I've made for YouTube before. That's just something that happens. I just don't understand how you could insult the person. I've never done that. I have only insulted the work that they've done because I just be like, I don't really understand how you could write that. Because, like, clearly it doesn't make sense. So why would you write it that way? I just want to understand where you're coming from here because it doesn't make sense. Why would you do this? That's usually where I come from things. But I would never go like, yeah, you, Four Eyes, who made this thing, you trash. You and your fucking stigmatism, that's why this is bad. That's stupid. That's really stupid. And I just don't understand how people could come to that conclusion. But with all of that out of the way, we can now actually talk about the show itself. Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft is a very flawed show. The problem that this show has is that the animation and the voice acting for the show are very solid. That is just the strong points of this show. However, the writing is unfortunately the worst part of this show. It feels like it was written in a way to move the audience from point A to point B so you could get to the next cool action set piece. That's what this show feels like. It has a very standard, what I would say, in my opinion, a very standard Tomb Raider story. Lara must stop this guy from attaining these ancient Chinese Infinity Stones. I'm only partially joking saying that, but she has to stop this guy from getting these ancient Chinese Infinity Stones so that he can use them to destroy some secret evil organization, but in the process, using the power of these stones would end up destroying the world. So she's in a race against time to go to all these different tombs and find the stones to stop him from using them and save the world. And by the end of the show, she has to return the stones to the god that created them, otherwise the world's still going to end. It is a very, bargain bin standard Tomb Raider story. It's not saying it's bad, but it's, what you would expect from it. However, the problem with this is the characters in the show are very shallow. They're all extremely one note, and it's really disappointing because in a story that people would come to expect from a Tomb Raider series, you'd be like, okay, yeah, ancient artifact, Lara has to get her hands on it, otherwise the world's gonna end. That's, kind of how people feel about it. That's what's going to happen. It's kind of just the thing that happens in every treasure hunting story between Uncharted, Indiana Jones, like all of these kinds of stories end up having it start off be like, I'm just going to find this ancient artifact. And then it's like, oh, this ancient artifact has like some weird mystical, alien, magical, whatever rigmarole going on. And now I have to put it back or I have to destroy it so that it doesn't end up killing people and destroying the world. It kind of just happens in all these kinds of stories. It's a formula that they follow, which there's nothing wrong with that because the formula works, but it's nothing new and unique to the story. So you need a little bit of extra oomph, and the action scenes definitely elevate the story. The voice cast definitely elevates the story, especially because one of my favorite voice actors is in the show. The main antagonist of the show is played by this guy. He is one of my favorite voice actors, and he has given my favorite monologue in all of cinema so far. And if you haven't seen Castlevania, his monologue in that, where it's Trevor Belmont giving a shit talk to death before he 1v1s him, is just phenomenal. And I feel like his talents were kind of wasted here on the writing because, he's giving it a good performance, but then he has no interesting dialogue to really convey to the audience. Like, there isn't a single line in here that I heard and I was just like, ooh, yo, that was fire. He was cooking with that one. That was a good line delivery. That one's going to stick in the noggin. There was nothing like that here. So that was extremely disappointing. Most of the characters here, they have one character trait, and then that's all they are. So let's run through the list really quick. Jonah is the heart of the group that gives wise words to everybody. That's it. That's who he is. Zip is the black gay best friend that's also the guy in the chair. That's it. That's who he is. Lara is, she's Lara Croft. She's the Tomb Raider. She has a lot more depth than everyone else in it, but she's kind of struggling with the trauma of one of her mentors dying, and she goes from being badass Tomb Raider to being like, I'm kind of being sad and edgy because my Tomb Raiding mentor passed away and I still haven't gotten over it. And it's just kind of repetitive. You've got the main antagonist, Charles Devereaux, who is supposed to be an evil foil to Lara because they have a similar origin story to a certain degree, even though there's another character that is literally the exact copy of Lara Croft, just with a different thing that happened to them in life, making them a literal foil to her character, which I find hilarious because a big part of this is the whole, oh, you're not like this, we're kind of the same kind of thing between Lara and Charles in the show, but like their lives are very different outside of one specific thing that happened, which I found very hilarious. And then the last character is Camilla, who is the woman I was just referencing that is the exact same as Lara Croft. She and Lara have the exact same backstory. They were both children raised by single fathers that were treasure hunters who both died being killed by, I shit you not, the same evil organization. The only difference between Lara and Camilla is that Camilla used her tomb raiding talents that she learned from her father to become, I believe it was an Interpol agent, and Lara followed in her father's footsteps and became a tomb raider. And this makes them actual foils to one another, but the show doesn't really do anything with that, which was really sad because I'm just like, well, you know, I feel like this would have been a really good character here. Or at the very least, like, granted, you know, I don't know the ins and outs of the Tomb Raider lore back and forward. I feel like Camilla should have been the bad guy of this, or Charles Devereaux should have just, like, they should have combined Charles Devereaux and Camilla into one character instead of having them both. Because I feel like if Lara's old friend, who had the same upbringing as her, ended up going down a different path than her, I feel like that would have been more interesting, but it's kind of hard to do that because Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft, takes place within the Survivor timeline, so the events of Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider are relevant to this show because it takes place after all of those games. So they kind of have to adhere to what happened in those games, and potentially, if Crystal Dynamics is making a fourth in that franchise, what they're going to do in the future. So it's kind of in this weird position where it can do stuff, but it can't do everything because it has to adhere to certain guidelines due to the lore of this timeline, which I think is a little disappointing, and it probably hindered the show's production a lot, at least in regards to the writer's room. But at the end of the day, even with these restrictions, I feel like they could have done something more with these characters, and they just don't, and it leaves them feeling very empty, which is unfortunate. Also, I just forgot a character. Jonah has a fiance. The fact that I don't remember her name just proves enough that she was not characterized. She's like barely in the show anyway. She shows up like every once in a while, or she's like on a phone call that we can't really hear, and it's just kind of like, am I supposed to care about this character? Now, I played through 2 out of the 3 games in the Crystal Dynamics trilogy right now, and I will be honest with you, I do not remember this woman whatsoever being in any of those games. I just don't. She wasn't that important to me when I played through the game, so I just didn't remember her, and she's not all that important in the show, which is just really unfortunate, but it does prove my point. These characters are not written very well. They are extremely hollow, and this leads to the show not having enough to pull you forward to make you invested in the already very shallow story, so there's nothing more here except cool action set pieces and good voice acting. But with the voice actors not having interesting dialogue to say, you're just left with cool action set pieces from the animation team, and that can't carry the show. So if you're someone that needs a very well-paced story with interesting characters, you're not going to get that here. And you're not going to like the show, and it's going to result in you hating it and having bad things to say about it. That's perfectly fine. I completely understand that. But if you're someone that's just like, I just want to turn my brain off and see some cool action, then you'll probably like the show more than other people. But overall, I would say that the show is kind of like, I don't know, a B, maybe a B- in regards of quality, because it's just, it doesn't have the story to match up with the high quality animation. And you need both to make something really good. It's why Castlevania is highly regarded. It has an amazing story with beautiful animation and an incredible voice cast. Couple all that together, you got yourself a hit show right there. This has the voice cast, it's got the animation, but it doesn't have the story. You can't leave that one because that's the most important part. Because someone giving bad dialogue can work if the story is written well. People will forgive poor performances if the story is doing well. I know Tom Hardy specifically said he wasn't trying when he made Mad Max Fury Road, and people loved that movie. So, you kind of need a good balance of everything for something to be high quality, and the show just doesn't have that balance whatsoever, which is incredibly unfortunate. Also, in regards to people who are fans of the Tomb Raider franchise, specifically right now to those who are fans of the Survivor Timeline games, that being Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, this show will probably upset you to a certain degree because it does things that feels like it's making the past games irrelevant. I know I just said that they work within a box to try and not do that, but they still kind of do that in their own way. So, as I mentioned, Lara is kind of going through the trauma of her mentor, Roth, passing away in one of the earlier games. And the issue with this is it makes Lara feel like Lara felt in Tomb Raider 2013. So if you happen to be someone who doesn't know about these games, they're like a prequel story to Tomb Raider, essentially. It is about the journey that Lara took from becoming a normal person to becoming a full-fledged Tomb Raider. In the first game, Lara was just a college student who ended up getting stranded on an island with a bunch of people trying to kill her and a bunch of ancient artifacts, and you saw her slowly transition from being a normal civilian into the badass legendary Tomb Raider. That was what the first game was about. So you see her become the cool badass. But now in this show, physically, she's the cool badass. She still has all of her skills and training, but mentally, she feels like the 20-year-old college student that just crash landed on an island where everything's trying to kill her. She has a lot of emotional trauma that she keeps going through, and it just brings to the point, like, didn't you work through this already? Your mentor died years ago, and it didn't really feel this way when I was playing the games, so, like, what happened? What just factory reset you to just start hating this stuff again? Like, you moved on a long time ago. Why are we back to the stuff we experienced in the first game? This is really weird. And I know this for a fact because my friend who's really into Tomb Raider, he finally got a chance to watch some of the show. He was halfway through episode 1. He paused it and called me and went, I don't like the way Lara feels in this show because she feels like she did in the first game, and this is years later and she shouldn't feel this way. And I'm like, yeah, you're right, 100%. It's a problem. So if you have a fondness for those games, going into this show, it might be really vexing to see that Lara is going through shit that she went through in the previous games, and it'll feel like her character isn't progressing. It'll feel like she's just rehashing the same character arc to end up back in the same point where she already was. And I personally hate that character trope so much. I hate characters advancing themselves, and then all of a sudden the writers are like, I don't know what to do with this character now that I've evolved them. I'm just going to have them go through the same character arc again, and hopefully no one will notice. I hate that so much. It's so frustrating. And if you're a casual fan of Tomb Raider, yeah, I don't know, watch a highlight reel of all the action from the show. That's really all this can offer you, in my personal opinion. I don't think it really has the intrigue of the story and character writing to bring you into this, like maybe playing the other games would have done, or watching the Angelina Jolie movie, because I know a lot of people have a lot of fondness for it. I haven't seen the movie in many years, so I don't remember how it holds up. If you guys are interested in me covering that, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see if I can make the time to rewatch the movie and make a video seeing if it still holds up. But, yeah, so I can't really recommend you this show. So like I said, just, I don't know, skim through the episodes, watch the cool action sequences, because I think those are worth watching. Or maybe, someone has a compilation highlight reel of all the cool action set pieces in it on YouTube, so then you can watch it that way. But other than that, I would not recommend you watching the show, which is a shame, because I do like Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider was one of the first games that I played back in the day, and I was really into it. I really love treasure hunters. Lara Croft is the reason I am a fan of treasure hunting stories, because she was the first one that I saw. I played Tomb Raider. I saw her going through the tombs, shooting people with the pistols. I didn't know what the hell I was doing because I was a little kid who shit at video games. I mean, still kind of shit at video games. But I can beat them now as opposed to when I was a little kid. So, I played that, and it was just an eye-opening experience for me. I really enjoyed that, and then because of her, I went on to watch Indiana Jones, to play Uncharted, to watch National Treasure. I watch One Piece. All of that started because of Lara Croft. So, it's a real shame that this show isn't just the peak thing that I wish it was, so I could be like, yeah, the character that got me into cool treasure hunting stories has her own badass animated series that I can rewatch whenever I feel like now. It's a shame that that isn't the case. If the show happens to get greenlit for a second season, which, given all the negative attention it's getting, I don't know if it will, but if it does, the writing needs an improvement. I don't know if you need to bring in a co-writer to work on the show alongside the person that's already writing it, or whatever, but just take some advice, work on the show, flesh out the characters more, and, that will make everything feel a lot more natural and more entertaining. So, yeah, that's all I've got to say on Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're gonna send a bomb to my house because you didn't like what I said, I'd advise not, but I don't really have any control over that. But I'd appreciate you not doing that. Maybe a T-Rex. I'd take the T-Rex. I'd fight the T-Rex. Doesn't mean I'd win, but I think it'd be cooler to go out by T-Rex than opening up a package with C4 in it. I'm just saying. So yeah, whether you didn't like what I had to say, let me know what you thought down below. If you did see the show, let me know how you felt about it. Oh, right, I forgot to mention that. There are people who were criticizing this show who hadn't seen it yet. So, yeah, that's just, how you gonna hate the shit? How you gonna hate from outside the club? That's just ridiculous. With all that being said, I'm the innocent villain. Remember, folks, you're innocent until proven villainous, and I will catch you next time. Peace out.